Okay, so that's us now. Okay, so good evening and welcome everybody to this webinar jam event that we have this evening. My name is Emer Gallagher. Some of you may know me from Careers, Employability and Skills, and also from possibly working with me with Degree Plus. We're absolutely delighted this evening to have a panel of 4 guests, all of whom happen to be alumni as well. I'd like to thank the Development and Alumni Relations Office as well for helping to bring us 3 of our panellists this evening, Tessa, Fergus and Binod. We also have Jordan Hendricks from First Derivatives, who our employer engagement team have brought with us, and Jordan is a Queen's alumnus as well, as it happens. So we're going to be here for roughly an hour. There is over on the right hand side of your screen, if you're on a PC or lower down in your mobile, a chat option. And if you have questions or comments during the evening presentation, please put those there as we go along. Okay, so the aim of the event this evening is very much about introducing you to the 4 speakers here. Here we have 4 inspiring and influential alumni. They have their own personal story to tell, and they're also going to share some personal tips and advice, particularly bearing in mind the COVID-19 situation. So essentially what we want to do is to allow them to showcase and encourage you to consider the long-term value of your Queen's degree and also of the professional attributes that you've been developing during your course, during the early stages of your working life, if you're a recent alumnus joining us. How things like resilience, flexibility, networking, general opportunism, even in times of difficulty as well, and personal optimism can feed in as part of your career strategy to overcome challenges such as COVID-19. And COVID-19 is a challenge now, but we inevitably all during our careers have different challenges. Sometimes there are challenges for our employers as market changes and so on. Sometimes there are challenges for us in our personal life. And COVID obviously is a global challenge. We're all in the one boat with it. But again, the things that you're learning and we're learning to cope with now as we go along in this COVID-19 situation will also stand to you in any subsequent challenges that you encounter as you move along. We also very much are encouraging you to connect, stay in touch with Queen's. Queen's is a wide and an influential global community. So that is something that you're able to carry forward with you following your Queen's degree. And we encourage you with that. One other thing that I would ask of those of you who are final year students or alumni who have graduated, say, within the last 15 months, there is a survey that comes around from the Higher Education Statistic Agency called Graduate Outcomes. And we would ask you and encourage you to complete that survey at your 15-month post-graduation point. It will ask you about things like your employment situation, or are you doing further study? What are you doing now, essentially? And that information from that is so useful to us and to universities across the UK in helping to feedback and helping us to flex and develop the support that we give back to students who are coming in your footsteps behind you. So please, when you see that coming through, we would appreciate if you can complete that. But without further ado, tonight is really about hearing from our 4 speakers. So we have this evening and are delighted to have joining us from New York, Tessa Breslin, who's the Managing Director and Head of YSC Americas. We have Fergus Boyd, who is Interim CEO of the appetizingly titled Mindsauce. We'll also break after we've heard from Tessa and Fergus. We'll hear from both of them first of all. We break after Fergus completes for audience chat, and perhaps we'll have time for a poll and ask the audience type question. And my colleague who's kindly joined us this evening, Diane Masson, Diane will chair that part of the audience questions that are coming forward from you. So please do keep those questions coming forward. We will answer as many of them as we can, and those that we don't get to this evening, we will come back and follow up on. Once we've allowed a few minutes for those chats and questions and taken from those, we will move and invite then Jordan Hendricks, who has kindly joined us this evening from First Derivatives. And Jordan is well placed to give us employer perspectives in terms of the local economy and the Northern Ireland economy, given that her work as a recruitment executive with First Derivatives. And Jordan herself is also a Queen's alumnus. And finally, last but not least, we very much appreciate Binod Martin joining us. Binod's joining us from India. It's 10 o'clock this evening in time in India with Binod. So Binod is the Chief Technical Officer of Trillium Beverages, and again, a sensory specialist at Flavour Active. So all of these alumni and speakers joining you this evening have significant experience in terms of overcoming challenges. They are very much keen to pass on their story, advice and share tips with you. So we do hope that you find it useful. At the end, we will close with a few final audience questions, and then we'll take a few closing comments, and I will give you some follow-up networking contacts as well at the end. So without further ado, could I invite Tessa to put her camera and mic on, and we will hear from Tessa in terms of her experience really since graduating from Queen's. So Tessa, we invite you to.
Lovely, thank you, Emer. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Greetings from New York. So my Queen's story started in 1994. It's kind of shocking to me that my university career was in the last century, but there we go. So I started with a degree in psychology, and I took an opportunity, given the political situation that was in Northern Ireland at that time. There was an opportunity to study in the US under the Business Education Initiative. And I took that opportunity and studied in Pittsburgh for a year. And that's where I discovered this thing called IO psychology, or occupational psychology, as we call it back home. And I came home and graduated. And one of my friends tipped me off to say, you know what, there's something in the Careers Centre, and if you apply for this particular bursary scholarship, you can have your master's degree and your living expenses taken care of. And I thought, I'm absolutely going to apply for that. And I did it, and I got it, and I did my master's degree in occupational psychology at Queen's too. I took a placement as part of the end of that degree and moved to a company that's part of the WPP group, a marketing and advertising conglomerate. And I did my placement. And as it came to the end of the placement, I was starting my job hunting. And I asked the CEO of the company for some advice. And I was begging on the inside, like I desperately wanted to stay, but I wasn't brave enough to ask. But he asked me if I would stay with the organization, and I was absolutely thrilled to do so. I was there right through until just after September the 11th. So I was working in consulting when September the 11th happened. And I share this with you because I think there's been kind of some key global events that have affected the world of work. And one was September 11th, another was a global financial crisis, and we're living through the third right now. And I think at that time I was actually laid off. I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. But I actually got invited back to that very same company about 6 weeks later into a promoted role. And it was only in preparation for today that I found myself thinking about that, because I feel that in the land now of furloughs and layoffs and redundancies, it's easy to get dispirited. And I would say actually maintain your course, keep your optimism, and keep your networks open for opportunity to come your way. I then, shortly after that, moved to work for British Airports Authority, BAA, and BAA at that time owned Gatwick, Stansted, Heathrow, 3 Scottish airports, international businesses. And ultimately I headed up talent for BAA. So we were working out who's going to be the next MD of Heathrow. And Heathrow at that point was, it employed 70,000 people. It was quite an exciting and significant place to be leading on a talent agenda. I then moved to work for Sodexo, a French facilities management firm, and I headed up talent, leadership development, and performance management for the UK and Ireland business. And then we got the opportunity to move to the States, actually with my husband's job. And we just took the opportunity. We just thought we always wanted to move here. Why not? And we came initially thinking it was just, for a short-term 2-year gig, and 10 years later, we're still here. I work for a company called YSC. We're a leadership strategy organization, and we help organizations answer the question, have you got the leaders you need to pull off your commercial strategy? Yes, no, how do you know? So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I have the privilege of leading the YSC Americas business. And I thought now I would just turn my attention to just share with you some of the insights we have about what is going to be critical in terms of future skills as you set out. So the first thing to share with you is at YSC, we spend a lot of our time assessing and developing senior leaders. We're operating top of house. We've got great insights into what does it take to be successful. And what you see on this slide in the center there in terms of judgment, drive, and influence, those are the core elements of potential. And this has come from the psychology of success across a range of industries and walks of life. And these things hold true in terms of judgment. How do you think? How do you process? How do you make decisions? Drive. How do you use your energy, your resilience, your initiative? And influence. How do you read a situation? How do you influence? How self-aware are you? And what I've mapped around here is based on research from a number of different places, but also from the World Economic Forum about the future skills. And you'll see that these map into these areas of judgment, drive, and influence. And I just wanted to share these with you because these 7 elements are things to think about as you're walking into conversations about opportunities, walking into meetings, whatever it is, wherever you find yourself, these will have relevance. So let me just start briefly on judgment. I think one of the critical things is around this global mindset. It's the ability to think beyond what's presenting in front of you. It's the ability to be able to connect concepts and see things at a macro level. The leveraging big data and AI, Binod and Fergus will talk more, I'm sure, about these areas, but really think about how does technology and data play into your world of work. And even if you chose English and history for good reason, you really want to be thinking about how do you leverage data and technology going forward, because you definitely don't want to be left behind. And the last piece around judgment is this ability to think flexibly, to be able to innovate, to be able to connect concepts, really critical as the pace of change just accelerates and accelerates. The next place I want to take you is around this comfort with ambiguity. It's really important to be able to be resilient, to be confident enough to be able to thrive when things are uncertain. And it's just becoming such a critical skill as we look at leaders going forward. And then into the area of influence. Now, some of this might feel that it's a step beyond where you are right now around leading others. But I would say to you, even if you are an individual contributor and you're not yet leading a team or a business or a function or an enterprise, think of yourself as a leader in that individual contribution that you make. Think about how you're going to grow people around you, how you're going to be additive to their journey. Think about how inclusive and authentic you can be within your workplace, and think about your impact, in every interaction that you're having. Are you projecting the sort of leader that you want to be in the future? So I'm going to just pause there and create a bit of space now to hand over to Fergus.
Hello, thank you very much for that. Very good. And I will emphasize some of these things you mentioned. Is my volume okay? I hope so. I'm sure the team will let me know if it isn't.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. I'm going to go on to the first slide. You notice, though, at the moment, I've got this mind source. I'll come back to that, the company I'm working for at the moment. I like Queen so much, I came back twice. So I did a BSc, first of all. I think I must be the old boy of this group, way back in 79, 82. Then I did a very useful internship with BBC London, and then came back for a PhD. I think NIES, if you don't know what that means, it stands for Northern Ireland Electricity Service. I think it still exists, and they actually helpfully sponsored my PhD, which is to do with taking data from power stations like Pullbeg and various others up down south, and and in Northern Ireland. I'll go through some of these in more detail in a couple of slides because I've got some pictures to show you, just to give you a feel for how much there is in each company in terms of the kinds of things you can do. But basically one thing led to another. So the BSc Electronic Engineering then led into PhD. And I think because I did a power degree, the CGB were interested in me. Now that's a company you won't have heard of because it doesn't exist anymore. It was the nationalized version of National Power, National Grid, Central Electricity Generating Board, which looks after Great Britain, I think, excluding Northern Ireland. Did a stint there. Then British Airways. So basically I switched from utilities to airlines, did a brief stint in management consultancy, didn't like it too much, so a year was enough for me. And then back to airlines, Virgin, and then moved into hospitality. That's kind of where I am at the moment. And I'll give you some examples of these hotels in a second. But I'll give you some pictures first of all. So that is actually a training simulator. So big scale and game, if you like. So those guys that are kind of were my colleagues standing around, they're doing some testing, but that simulator desk is in a headquarters in Oldbury, which is near Bristol. And it was powered from an IBM mainframe running big computer programs in London and using kind of BT telephone links to make the two talk to each other. So my job in the CGB was basically writing big Fortran programs, which no one talks about anymore. It's not a sexy language, but writing real world programs. So we would do things like the water level in the drums that are boiled to make the steam that drives the turbines. And we design training simulators for gas, oil, coal, which is not so sexy these days, and nuclear, and actually a couple of wind turbines as well, which are coming in around that time. But basically, one thing led to another. CGB was very much around training simulators, but big scale computing, but meeting the real world. So a lot of real-time processing going on in the CGB. And how on earth did I go from there to British Airways? So I actually applied. I was in the CGB for 3 years. I left just before it became privatized and broke into the two. But I applied for a job in the training simulators, the flight simulators in British Airways. Didn't get that, but they took me into the IT department for engineering. And you notice a rather sexy aircraft behind that group of people. I'm in there, I think I'm second row, middle-ish, darker hair in those days. But we were writing software that basically looked after the maintenance schedules for all of the British Airways aircraft, including the 7 Concords. And that was taken at Heathrow base. But to give you an idea, I mean, that's about 60 people. I think there are about 100 in total. Back then, 100 people were in British Airways purely looking after IT for engineering. BA has, as you notice, unfortunately, in the press, changed dramatically since and outsourced everything. But pretty much in those days, there was no choice. You did everything inside. You had your own unique software. But I moved within BA, and BA was like a city then, probably still is in terms of lots and lots of opportunities. So I moved from engineering to a group called product development. And because I had an IT background, my interest was very much around IT for customer propositions. So back then, this is one of my many projects, we put in BT Open Zone into the VIP lounges, Heathrow, New York, Gatwick, Dubai, all around the world with different partners. Back then, we actually made some money from Wi-Fi. It wasn't free as it is now, but that was the kind of first implementation of Wi-Fi. And to give you another idea, that kind of led on. This is actually 2001, where British Airways actually led the game, and we put Wi-Fi connectivity on board a test 747, a jumbo, that flew every day between London and New York. So customers, I think the cost is about $30 for a fixed fee for the price. You could start your journey in the lounge, fly on board, do your connectivity, and then finish off in the lounge on the other side. And that was using satellites that Boeing provided. So that was, and this is now commonplace. Norwegian have it, BA have it, Virgin have it. But back then, this is kind of BA leading the game with Boeing's help to get connectivity in the air using satellites. And then I think the most interesting bit of my BA stint, I moved into what was then very embryonic BA.com. So things like book yourself a ticket online, choose your seat. I actually had all the mobile pieces. So those little pictures are from a Nokia 7110, which is the phone that was fashionable in Matrix, the movie, version 1. And we had a tiny version of online check-in on those phones using technology called WAP, which certainly doesn't exist any longer. And then basically did my stint. I did a year out. Willie Walsh came into British Airways, changed things dramatically, and I took voluntary severance. Moved out for a year into management consultant. He put me into telecoms, and then got a tap on the shoulder by some colleagues who'd moved from BA to Virgin and introduced me back into another airline. So I worked for Big Blue, British Airways, and Little Red, Virgin Atlantic. Very different styles. But in the Virgin Atlantic experience, I was also doing IT for airports, IT for on board, and then the kind of, again, more interesting bit, I think, for me was moving into virginatlantic.com. So doing the online selling and servicing. And I think we spent about a tenth the cost that it cost British Airways to get to do the same thing, because we didn't really have that much money in Virgin. Both companies have changed dramatically now, and if there's any questions on that, I'll quite happily chat about them. But I certainly was there, and I think the best days of BA and the best days of Virgin. Got a tap on the shoulder by that gentleman who's called Simon Woodruff, who was one of the original Dragon's Den judges. Him and his compatriot Graham Greene set up a very interesting disruptor challenger hotel company. And the reason there's sushi on the table, Simon is also the guy who set up Yo Sushi. He got some ideas from Japan and brought them back to the UK and brought in these other little carousels in restaurants, still going strong. But the idea that Simon and Jared created together was micro hotels, capsule hotels, but a bit bigger. And that's an example of one of the bedrooms in New York, again, still going strong. You might notice the bed there looks a little bit petite. The reason being is it's very good use of space. You press a button and by the side of the bed, and that bed actually moves out and fills most of the room. So a queen couch, as it is in the moment, becomes a queen bed. And that, again, was borrowed from the idea from British Airways and from Virgin of upper class and first class seats that can move. And if I move on, I won't talk too much about this, but Yotel is still going strong. When I was there, we had 10 hotels. Now I think it's about 15 or so, but smaller rooms. And this is a good example of a kind of disruption concept. So Yotel came in to basically allow hospitality asset managers to squeeze more rooms into the same cubic space, but still have a good price to the customer, but put in more technology. So it's a kind of a millennial and young at heart type hotel concept. If you go to, I recommend you go to the Yotel website, you'll still see some very interesting and funky technology. I won't dwell too much on this one, but Yotel is right in the middle there, and this is kind of an XY chart of pricing, so the cost you stay versus the luxury level. So Yotel wasn't trying to compete with W or Dorchester Collection or Edition, kind of the really, really high-end brands, but neither was it trying to be cheap as chips down there with Travelodge and Easy Hotel, both of which are very good at their proposition. Yotel was trying to create a new space called affordable luxury. So decent price, so it wasn't cheap. I give you an example. New York prices could be $200, $300 for one night during the year, but could be $99 in January when the weather gets pretty inclement in New York. Moved from there. After a few years, Yotel was kind of becoming more of an asset management company, so I wanted to get back into more functional hotels and went from basically a 3.5-star company, which is Yotel, to 5-star. Red Carnation is a family-run hotel and has 17 hotels globally, including 2 in Ireland, although they're down south. They're in County Mayo. That's some gorgeous castle hotels, 6 or 7 in London, and they're all 4 or 5 star. And to give you an idea, staying a night in that, which is Ashford Castle Hotel, would cost from minimum €600 a night to €4,000 a night. So a very different ballpark. But Red Carnation is very much leading with service and was relatively light on the technology. This is my summary, if I haven't run out of time. Life learnings, or so many as I could squeeze in. Yes, I think I call them the basics, learn the basics. So customer focus, commercial acumen, project management. These probably aren't the things you'd study in your courses, but these are the softer skills that you really need to focus on, because these are relevant to every job out there, especially teamwork and collaboration. Don't be afraid to pivot. This is going to be flexible. Pivot is kind of a more modern term for, oops, I made a mistake, change direction. And a lot of the .coms did that very, very quickly. But don't be afraid if you think you're going in the wrong company, doing the wrong job. Don't be afraid to pivot. And I think, as Tessa was saying, try new things, be agile, work overseas. I think that's one of the first in my Queen's year to go into London and change tack completely. Right now, I think it's been said that if you want to improve yourself, learn 2 languages. One's Mandarin, Chinese, and one is computer language of some kind. Python's a very strong artificial intelligence oriented language. Definitely get on LinkedIn, listen before you start posting things to just find your way around, but get your profile up on LinkedIn as soon as you can and join groups within LinkedIn. Don't forget your personal network is so important. And societies are in your area of interest. So for me, IET, Institute of Electrical Technology, and those other 2 are hotel things. I'm also a trustee of the Royal Institution, which is the guys who do the Christmas lectures, which is based in Piccadilly. And they've actually got a lecture on tomorrow. They're running free lectures now that we're all in lockdown rather than their lovely physical building. Whatever happens, don't burn bridges. So make sure you aren't nasty to people, but that doesn't mean you can let them run over you, but don't burn bridges, because you may meet the same people time and time again. And it isn't all about work. Make sure you've got a life and something more and hobbies to keep those things going. I've put a couple of, these are clickable links you'll get in the deck from me, but one talks a bit more about detail, some of the things I did in British Airways, and one talks more about the Virgin Atlantic piece. I'll also add a third link. There's a company I use in both British Airways and Virgin called Inspiring Interns. I think they're still going, but I got graduates, interns to effectively come into both BA and Virgin, and actually Yotel as well, to do some short-term projects. And in both cases, I ended up taking those students on into real jobs thereafter. So I recommend that approach as well. And I think that's me.
Thank you very much indeed, Fergus, and thank you, Tessa, as well. So Diana, saw that we have a number of questions coming in through that in the chat. Do you want to kick off with those?
Yeah, we have a few questions that came in. Thank you, Emer. First of all, a question specifically for Tessa, basically around advice for students who want to move away from Northern Ireland and seek graduate employment outside of Northern Ireland. More generally, I suppose, would you have any general advice? But specifically, did you feel that the year abroad that you spent during your time at Queen's helped you to adjust to moving abroad and settling in the States?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
You can.
Yeah, perfect. So what would I say? I would say keep your options open and be really, really flexible. Because our context, we were supposed to be moving to the States with my husband's job at the time. And I'll take you in on this. He was working with Lehman Brothers. And as most of you will know, Lehman Brothers went down in September 2008. And we were to move with Lehman Brothers in the summer of 2009. And we thought our opportunity was gone. And that's not what happened. Nomura bought over Lehman in Europe and Asia. We got the same opportunity a year, exactly the same timelines. So there's something about just keep the faith, that things will kind of come your way. But I would just keep options open. And to the specific question about, the year in Pittsburgh definitely opened up my eyes to just, I think, to that point about diversity, just the variety of people that you interact with. How do you make connections with people? How do you keep in touch with people? How do you keep relationships authentic and sustained over time? And it certainly helped whenever we moved to state, because one of the things that people don't tell you about New York is that it's a very transient population. So it's really difficult actually to make friends. You tend to find that international people make friends with international people because local people are like, well, they're coming and going. So it can be hard to have a sticky, sustained relationship in a city that feels like it's always moving. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tessa. Another question for yourself and Fergus around experience. So a number of students have sort of made comments in the chat around some of them feel that they lack experience. We also have a student whose internship unfortunately has fallen through due to the current situation. They're furloughed from their placement at the moment. And I suppose they have concerns around that and whether their lack of experience will be, a drawback. Maybe Fergus, if you could take that one first, if that's okay.
I'll just remember to turn my microphone. I think, having employed many interns in my time, you're not looking for experience from an intern. You're looking for attitude, flexibility, positivity. So I think it's more a case of stress what you enjoyed at university, stress what interests you, and just show that you've got you're willing to learn, you've got flexible skills, you sit and listen, you'll be hands-on if need be, you'll do a bit of training if need be. So I think, attitude is so much more important for trainees than experience, I would say.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tessa?
I'd probably just put two more thoughts to that. One is I would get creative, because I assess people for a living. And when people are able to say, I was leading this sports team or I volunteered there, being able to demonstrate experience in other places and being able to tell the story and weave a bit of a story around what you got out of it. The second thing I would say is, and it builds off Fergus's point, when I was showing the potential model earlier, drive is one of the things that you can't develop if people don't have it. People will always say, I hire for attitude and I will train capability and skill. So show your initiative, because that's one thing. If people don't have innate initiative, it's really difficult to put it into people. So just show your initiative, get creative, get out there.
Thank you. That's great. I suppose following on from that, then we have a question just around that experience and your experience wheel, if you like, Tessa. One student is asking, what is the most effective way of incorporating future skills in our conventional skills? And another student is asking, how were you able to translate your education into experience when applying for positions? She's sort of saying all positions seem to require so much experience. I guess you've kind of answered that already. That's more about attitude. And what advice would you give to students and graduates trying to find internships or entry-level positions at the moment?
I would cast the net wide. I would be open to lots of different, because sometimes things present one way, but the actuality is a bit different. So I would be quite open-minded to where the opportunity lies. And I would also do the work. It is not the work of the employer to join the dots between your experience, your degree, and the opportunity. You need to do that thinking for them and lay it out for them and have that work done, so that it's easy for them to see how what you have fits with what they're looking for, and some. Always go that extra mile.
Thank you. A question specifically for Fergus, a little bit lighter, I guess. One student has asked, they said, thanks for a great presentation. Can I just ask Fergus, working for in such fantastic surroundings, such as 5-star hotels, does that change your lifestyle much?
No. So the secret no one tells you Five-star hotels, the bulk of the staff work underground in rooms with no windows. And, it's cobbler's children, if you know the expression. A lot of the technology is pretty ancient, especially in five-star hotels. So the money is spent on the customer experience, which it should be, because the customers are paying the bills, your bills, your wages. But you wear a tie, and if you go above ground, blinking in the daylight, you have to act your age and be on duty all the time. But behind the scenes, and that's true of everything Dorchester Collections, exactly the same. A lot of the hard work goes on underground in dungeons that the staff do not see.
Thank you. Thanks for that. A question here around change in direction. Obviously, both of you have had quite a varied career and worked for a number of organisations throughout your career to date. So can you recommend anything around changing direction? I have 10 years experience working in another country. I took a big turn in my career and fear that it's not relevant.
So I would challenge that. I think if you have 10 years experience in anything, there's something that you can pull forward and pull through that into a new experience. If you're wondering how to make that happen, sit down with somebody else and get them to ask you questions to pull that out, because there's definitely experience, capabilities, insights, learnings. And if you are finding it difficult to kind of process that yourself, get somebody to coach you through it and just say, what would you do differently if you're playing that again, or what might that mean in X industry, and just get some help to work that out.
Just to add to that as well, the phrase that a lot of recruiters use, I'm sure Tessa knows as well, is transferable skills. So you may have been doing X, but actually X can become Y because they're not that different. So don't say, I don't know, you're a offline marketing expert. Say you're a marketing expert, which can also translate to online. Is that kind of transferable? I know the basics, I know the capabilities, and I'm sure I can do that as well. So kind of transferable skills is something you should be stressing in your CVs. Okay,
great, thank you. I'll hand back to Emer, and she can introduce the next two speakers. Thank you both, Tessa and Fergus.
Yes, thank you both, and thank you, Diane. Also, just as we're talking here, I've put out to the audience there a poll about networking. Just asking you, the audience there, in terms of what sort of networking you currently use. You can click more than one answer in that poll there. But just picking up on a couple of things there as well. One of the student questions there was someone who had a placement that had fallen through, and maybe some people in the audience tonight maybe have had a graduate role that has fallen through. And it was interesting hearing Tessa talking about that in terms of, challenging yourself in terms of thinking and so on. Because I guess you got to look as well at this time and at the positives in that you got that role originally. You got yourself positively into that position. Its circumstances here are very unusual. Otherwise, you would be in that role. But you've obviously made a good contact and a good network there with them. You've impressed them. So, and as Fergus was saying, don't burn bridges. That's a connection for you where you had made a positive impression. Keep that. And also in terms of things that were said there in terms of networking as well, and the importance of the contacts you have here at Queen's, the importance of the contacts that you have in your wider sphere of influence, and also those from placements from earlier jobs and so on. Fergus mentioned don't burn bridges, which is important, and also heard Tessa talking there about the importance of authentic relationships, because those are the ones that people buy most into. An employer will want to feel that you're genuine, authentic as well. So with a number of responses coming in here, I can see quite a number of you are using potential online things like LinkedIn, social media, which is good. The other big one is personal networks as well. Is coming in. Certainly all of those that we had put in. 9% had none of the above, perhaps some others, but certainly one of the things we're wanting to do this evening as well, just to encourage you in terms of networking and thinking about that going forward. So the next piece, we're now moving into our two second speakers, Jordan and Binod. So could I invite Jordan to come forward to put on her mic and camera. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Jordan. Obviously they're in at the bottom, and whenever you're ready, if you want to move through into your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, especially as a Queen's alumni. It's definitely near and dear to my heart, and also to represent First Derivatives as well. So I'm really happy to be here. I guess a little bit of background kind of about myself to start off with. As you can see, I did put a wee snippet of my LinkedIn. I cannot stress enough just across the board how important LinkedIn is. It just keeps you up to date with other people that you know. It helps you make new contacts. Jobs are posted there. You can apply for roles there, and you're able to kind of break down and specify things that you're interested in your skill set. But that's a whole other lecture. But I would highly recommend getting connected to people you meet on LinkedIn. So I guess it's a little bit about me and my background. You can maybe tell from my accent. I've got a weird blend now, but I'm from the United States originally, and I moved to Northern Ireland to attend Queen's for my master's. I got my master's of business administration and international business, and I graduated in 2017, I think. So from that course, and now I'm currently working for First Derivatives, which is actually one of the largest graduate recruiters, or is the largest graduate recruiter across the island of Ireland. So hopefully in between kind of my experience so far to date and kind of that background that I'm working in now, I'll be able to give you guys some helpful tips. Unlike some of my co-panelists here, which have a lot of really great insights to give you, I am a lot more in the early stages of my career than they are. So I probably know a lot about kind of what you're going through in some ways. I know finding a job can be incredibly difficult, especially in different circumstances. So hopefully I'll be able to offer you guys some new information. But first, I'll just take you a little bit through my background kind of up to now, and then going to give you some more insight as a recruiter. So I just kind of threw everything into one slide because my journey was kind of zigzagged and all over the place. So I did my undergraduate degree at the University of North Georgia, which is a tiny town, a tiny college in a tiny town in Georgia. I guess where I'm from there was very much kind of a small community, but I knew kind of from the beginning that I wanted to travel and to experience new cultures and things like that. So I studied management in my undergraduate degree, and then spent 6 months studying abroad in Morocco at Al Akwain University. So that was something that I think growing up, I never thought I would even be able to go study abroad. And I took a kind of a big leap there. I knew very little about Morocco kind of going in. I probably never thought I'd be on the continent of Africa studying. But I think that's one of those things where the opportunity presented itself, and sometimes you just have to take the jump and take the leap. And it was one of the best experiences of my entire life. Not only did I learn so much about other cultures, I was studying management, so business and other cultures, kind of managing kind of the thought process I already had about the United States kind of climate versus European and transatlantic and all those other things as well. But I got to also have a lot of amazing personal experiences as well. I threw in a little photo of me with a camel in the Sahara Desert. So if I hadn't have just taken that leap, I never would have gotten to have an experience like that. I guess while I was still studying, when I was finishing up my final semester, I took a job at a North Georgia Wildlife Park or zoo. So I took my first role there while I was finishing my degree, and kind of the first couple months after I got my management degree. And I got a role in marketing and visitor experience. So that was mostly around social media marketing, kind of making different outreach and connections, and then a lot of event planning and marketing. So kids camps and theme nights and all those kinds of things kind of fell into my realm of responsibilities. So I got a lot of experience there. I learned a lot, and it's a smaller zoo. Probably wouldn't be totally unlike to Belfast Zoo. But because of that, I was pretty much the only one in marketing, and kind of given I had a degree, but my degree was in management, and I did enjoy what I was doing, but I just wasn't sure I was doing it well enough. Maybe I just didn't have the kind of the skills there to be running a one-person department and making a huge difference. So I decided I wanted to look to expand my education further. And I always knew I wanted to live abroad as well. So that's when I came across Queen's University. and that's where I did my MBA. So I spent a full year studying here, and then while I was studying there, I also happened to work in the careers office. So I actually know a lot of the people on the careers team and the people that you maybe talk to on a day-to-day basis, or if you have recently gone to Queen's and you went to the student guidance center, I was one of those people that stood on the ground floor and helped answer questions and hopefully point you in the right direction. So through that, I met a lot of different employers and different people and picked up a lot of different skills from that alone. But that's kind of where I came across First Derivatives as well. So some of you maybe heard of First Derivatives, maybe a wee bit. Our headquarters is in Newry, which is pretty much equidistant between Dublin and Belfast. So although it seems like it may be in the middle of nowhere, it's actually a really good position to be in, kind of when you've got a currently global business. So we now have over 2,600 staff, 15 global offices, New York, Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, Australia, pretty much everywhere all over the world. And we offer a lot of opportunities for graduates to travel and work in different areas. I'll go into a little bit more detail on First Derivatives and the kind of roles we have in a little bit. But the way I got into First Derivatives, actually, funnily enough, I had some experience in marketing and I did my management degree, but I applied for the Futures program. And if you don't know much about First Derivatives, it's basically an introduction to finance and technology and learning how to code and all these things that I had zero skill set in. So I just kind of took a leap there. The Futures program is open to all degree backgrounds, so we'll teach you everything from the ground up. And so I kind of took a leap there. I was always willing to learn, always happy to learn new things, so I applied for that. Kind of given my background and experience so far, there was actually a role opening up right at that time in marketing and in PR, so that's kind of where I ended up slotting into that area and filling kind of that need there. But I guess just on that point alone, I think if you're willing to try new things and willing to learn things, take the leap, try it. You never know how things may turn and pivot for you. I fell into this marketing position and absolutely loved it, and I took it and ran. So obviously I had some experience in it, but I was not working in a financial technology company. So something completely unbeknownst to me. I knew nothing. I knew very little about finance. I didn't do great in my finance courses to start with. And I knew nothing about technology. And our technology is focused on big data and data science and all kinds of things. So there was a lot of learning involved in that as well. And then my kind of role formed from just marketing to focus specifically on PR. And then I started running the entire kind of public relations function in coordination with the rest of the marketing team. But that was kind of my niche area. But I had no background in PR either. It was something that I was teaching myself. So I then did a diploma in public relations for the technology sector, completely online through the Fitzwilliam Institute. And I guess from there, I've just kind of never stopped learning. I think one of my key tips across the board is that you're never going to be fully prepared for anything. So I think just being prepared to just being open to learning new things and having the drive to, if I don't know that, I want to learn it and I want to do the best I can. I think that's really important. But that really made a difference, kind of doing that diploma and learning to apply that to my job. And I ended up getting nominated for Young Marketing Professional of the Year in the Computing Tech Marketing Innovation Awards. And that was a really big moment for me, especially so early on in my career. I'd only been a couple years in, so that was great. And then I also worked on some Amazon Web Services kind of business partnership relationship as well. So I kind of went out of my way to get an Amazon certificate as well. So I guess the whole point of most of this slide is that don't ever think that you're going to stop learning. I think that's a big part of just personal growth and professional growth as well. Moving on to a little bit more to my current role. About 6 to 8 months ago, I moved over to the people team, focusing more on the HR aspect of the role, marketing our recruitment and graduate opportunities, and kind of just working on the broader HR and talent acquisition team. So I guess historically we've recruited typically about 300 graduates per year. So I speak to a lot of you. I may have spoken to some of you before, and we do tons of events and different things like that. So we have a pretty sizable graduate intake every year, and those come from not only Northern Ireland and Ireland, but all over the world. So we've got grads from America and Australia and Madrid and Hong Kong. Like I said, we're very global. Everyone starts with us at our headquarters in Newry. So There's lots of different internationalities and cultures and people kind of all coming together in one place. So I guess to touch on kind of what we look for in graduates, I think the first thing that we look for is how you've gone above and beyond. So, and when I say that, I don't necessarily mean it in a very specific sense. I think I mean that more in you go to uni, and if you just go to class, obviously you're going to learn those things, the things that you need to know to graduate. But what else have you done? Have you taken a leadership role in a project? Do you have a part-time job? Have you gotten involved in societies and clubs, meetup groups? There are tons of different ways to get involved, and you may not even think about them as you're doing them. Sports teams, pretty much anything you do that adds kind of to the skill set you're already building outside of just uni is something that you should definitely be highlighting on your CV, and builds a lot of different kind of attributes and skills. Another thing we look for as well is just personal awareness. So I think, kind of following off the back of my other panelists as well, we don't expect you to know everything coming out of university. We don't necessarily expect you to have a job prior to this or a placement year. We know that doesn't always work out for everybody. But I think knowing kind of where your strengths are, taking time to analyze where your strengths and weaknesses are, where you can improve and where you can add value, and where your transferable skills are. So something you've picked up before, even leading a team in football or something like that, and how you can bring that to a job, kind of critically thinking about that, and being able to speak to that and to an interviewer is really important. Team working skills are also incredibly important, and I think those can be sometimes understated, or it may seem obvious, but pretty much everything that our company does is team based, and pretty much anywhere you go, you're never going to be working as your own. I think there's a common misconception in tech to begin with, that you're behind a computer and you're coding and you don't have to have interpersonal skills, and that's so far from the truth. You're always going to be working with other people and collaborating on things. So highlighting those skills and having those kind of team working skills is really important. And that doesn't mean that you need to be the leader of a team all the time, kind of falling into personal awareness as well. Sometimes project management may not be your particular strength, and then that's okay too. It's kind of knowing where you're able to add value is really important. And the most important thing is definitely the right attitude, approaching different problems and scenarios with a positive attitude, and being willing to learn and take on new challenges is so important. I guess really more than ever though, now is also a good time to make a good first impression. So whether that's through your CV, or if you, pretty much everything is done virtually at the moment, or from afar, so a video interview or a phone interview, all that's really important. So I think now, especially if you have some downtime to really focus on building up your CV, that's definitely a really important thing to make a good first impression. I guess following off of this as well, you're using lockdown productively during this time. So that would be kind of my key tip. As an employer, we are fully aware that a lot of people are going to be losing their placements in their graduate roles, and a year from now or 2 years from now, whenever you're graduating, whatever that may be, or if you've already graduated and you start looking for jobs, we know that's the situation. So we're not, I guess we're not expecting huge things. Like if a placement doesn't work out for you, show us your skills in other ways. And the first way to do that, I suppose, is to optimize your CV. So I think from an employer point of view, there's a couple of tips there that I think would be good to highlight. An obvious one as well is spelling and grammar. This is missed all of the time still somehow, but have other people read it, do an extra spell check, put it through Grammarly, and make sure there's no mistakes on your CV, because that just shows you don't have the best attention to detail. And now is an important time to be highlighting that. I would also use this time as well, where you've got some extra time, to really build out the layout of how you want your CV to look. Maybe don't make it just a list of bullets. Maybe make the way you want it to look, and the way you present your actual skill set and your job descriptions, if you have any, is really important. Another thing to touch on as well, just like I said, we know you're a graduate, we know you're coming out of uni, so we don't expect you to have tons of experience. So your CV doesn't need to be 4 or 5 pages with a list of every skill and every project you've ever done. I think really tailor your CV to the role you're applying for, and make sure it's relevant, and you're highlighting the key skills and the key projects that are relevant to the job you're doing. The next thing to touch on is kind of doing your research. So if you know what you want to do, and you know what industry you want to get in, that's great. And this is the perfect time to gain genuine knowledge in that area. So what's happening in the industry right now, who are the major players, what are the current trends, who are your dream company, who are their competitors. Being genuinely knowledgeable about those kinds of things in the industry is a great way to impress your recruiter, and it's really obvious when you're on the other end if somebody's just rehearsing things that they've practiced from what they've read off of your website. Granted, that's better than not knowing anything at all about a company, but if you can genuinely know about the industry, that's a great way to kind of really impress your interviewer. On the contrary, if you're not sure what you want to do, which is something that I really struggled with kind of getting into my career, I had no idea what I wanted to do at all, and it can be very difficult to kind of figure that out. So it may be a good time now to take some extra time rather than applying for everything you see to take a step back and reflect on your career and what you want out of your career. If you want to travel or work closer to home, if you want something with a rapid career progression, or if you want something that's maybe not quite as fast paced, if you are really passionate about environmental awareness or charity work, you may want to look at companies that offer time in lieu, so you can do charity work a certain number of hours per month. Some companies offer. If those are the things that are important to you, I think those are the things that you need to take the time to highlight and address during this time. I won't hone too much on the importance of LinkedIn because I did touch on those earlier, but I definitely think that that's a really important part of building connections and staying connected. Building genuine relationships can also kind of be supported by liking people's posts, commenting when they have an accomplishment or a promotion, and just keeping in touch in those little ways rather than having to, you don't feel like you have to call somebody every couple of weeks or a month to keep that connection. I think LinkedIn really facilitates a way to stay in touch with people without maybe overdoing it or coming across disingenuine. It also helps you build your personal brand, I suppose, being able to identify your talents and communicate them effectively to your employer or your peers, your community is important. And if you have some extra time and you've got the drive to learn, there are tons of places offering free online courses at the moment. So there's Coursera, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, about 1 million others that are offering free courses right now, given the current situation. So I do have our company has a blog kind of on these different areas and going into them more expansively. So I have added a link there if anybody's interested in reading a little bit more on specifics and kind of more content in that area. I think touching brief, I know I'm probably taking up more time than I probably should, so I'll probably go through the rest of these here quickly. But I guess what to expect in your job search now. So many companies have had to redact offers or push them out. I know First Derivatives, we've been able to, the word I'm looking for is just escaping me, we've been able to facilitate a few different kind of virtual training sessions from afar for kind of a small number of graduates, but for the most part, we've had to defer a lot of our graduate intake. So we haven't redacted anything. We're hoping we're not going to have to ever do that. But our timelines have changed a little bit. So I know a lot of other companies are in similar situations, and a lot of other companies have had to pull their offers completely. So I think the first thing is to be flexible and to be patient. I think those are the really important things. Even from an employer perspective, we don't want to take those away. We want you to come on board, and we liked you to begin with. So try to maintain those relationships and understand the other side as well. A lot of employers will still have plans to hire graduates. This is kind of built into their fundamental way of bringing in good employees and building up talent. So I would say don't give up hope. Things will pick up back up again. It's just the uncertainty of right now and kind of what that looks like for the next few months can be quite difficult. So the landscape will be competitive. I think across the board, everyone's kind of in the same boat looking for these positions. So the more you can do now to kind of amp up your CV, the more you'll appreciate that for yourself later. Another thing, if you do get into recruitment processes and you're speaking to people, pretty much everything will be done virtually. So whether that's phone interviews, things like that, be prepared for those. And then soft skills like time management will be more important than ever. I know working from home and virtually, being able to manage your own time without people checking in on you in person all the time will be really important. These are just some resources. I'll leave these for now just because they'll be in the deck if you guys take a look at this afterwards. Just a couple quick tips and then I'll be done on my end. Don't get discouraged. Spend some time perfecting your CV and invest in yourself, even if that's just time. Take some time to kind of figure out what you want to do, identify your own strengths. And then just my personal tips, and this is the end for me, is just don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone. I wouldn't have a career that I love now, working for a company that I absolutely love, if I didn't take the leap and go abroad. I moved across the world. I will now work in a fintech company. I never thought I would do that. So I think don't be afraid to put yourself out there and take a risk. Sometimes it's good for you. Find a coach or a mentor, even if that's somebody. I know I found people in my kind of sector through work, and I've also found people. I'm currently working in recruitment, so I've reached out to somebody at my dad's company that knows my dad quite well, and my dad would be in a completely different sector, but has obviously colleagues that work in recruitment. So even just speaking to somebody that has more experience than you, they can share things with you that they wish that they'd known before. So it may have taken them 5 years to figure out one specific thing, and if they tell you that, it will save you a lot of time. So I definitely think finding mentors that you can speak to through any personal connections you have is really important and really helpful. And just never stop learning, and try your best to make the journey fun. It may not always be easy, and it may not always be what you thought at the beginning, but having a positive attitude will make everything a lot easier. But I think I slightly went over there, so apologies, Emer, but that's me on my end.
Thank you. And yes, I know we are going over time a little bit, but these are some very genuine messages and tips that a panel are sharing with you. So our final speaker this evening is Binod. Binod, would you like to turn on your camera and mic and hear your presentation as well? Thank you very much for joining us, Binod.
Hello, Emer. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Binod Matin, and my introduction has already been given. So I would like to just start with my early education and job, just a little bit of idea about that. I had my BSc honors in chemistry and also MSc in analytical chemistry. Analytical chemistry, in fact, it was not a popular subject, but I could visualize that, yes, it's a very important subject for industry and academia both. So I just pursued on that, and then I finished that degree. I also wanted to go for higher studies, and particularly higher studies in the UK, because I knew some of the analytical chemistry department in the UK. So I wanted to come over, but unfortunately I couldn't get the right opportunity at that time. So I preferred to do a couple of jobs in India. I took a job with the Groundwater Board. This is a Government of India organization. And I could do that, a lot of work on groundwater quality mapping and exploration for almost 7 years. And then I moved on to industry, because I knew that analytical chemistry is important also in industry. So there also I connected from water to wastewater, but also took care of the quality management of paper. And then the opportunity coming in for the Queen's University, Belfast, because I never given up. I have been always trying to do a PhD, and it didn't happen, and almost 7 years has gone by then. And I tried various university in the UK who were known for analytical chemistry. Unfortunately, I got an offer for a studentship. Primarily, it was a teaching assistantship from a very learned professor, Professor Duncan Thorburn, who was a professor in the analytical chemistry department. And the chemistry department in Queen's University of Belfast was one of the 4 universities who were well known for analytical chemistry. And it was a first established chair of analytical chemistry. So I was very lucky to get in that department, and I prefer to work on there. What I have gained there, because my main aim was to study analytical chemistry and keep on advancing it. So I got added opportunity of laboratory teaching, which has actually made me to learn more of the chemistry and analytical chemistry, because I was doing both teaching and learning. And then I was working on a problem which was a very complex problem actually, because a lot of work had been done already. And when you are doing research for PhD, it's always very critical, because if you take a new topic, yes, then you have whatever approach you apply, it's it's a new of its own. It could be a new finding, it could be a repeat finding. But for me, it was a challenge to find new from the old work done. And it was very interesting, and I could do a lot of work, and then eventually I succeeded. Of course, I got expert guidance and supervision by Professor Burns, and I could successfully complete the PhD. And I also got excellent support from my colleagues and staff in the chemistry department, also from the other departments in the university, because like going to the computer department, also geography department, some kind of instruments like electron microscope and things like that, which was available in some other department. And I was able to get help from everybody, and I have been very successful, and I really enjoyed working for PhD. And I could do some very interesting publication in high impact journals, and a lot of learning for also presentation in the conference, both internal and the global conferences. Regarding social life, yes, that was another very important thing, because I was working in Belfast when it was not very environmental friendly at that time. But even then, I enjoyed very friendly people. I enjoyed their hospitality very much. And also, I enjoyed going around because Northern Ireland is a very scenic place. So I did that. Some pictures, you can see that we in the department, we often have the meal together or picnic. And here are a couple of pictures from my lab. You can see I'm working on some electrochemistry and things like that. And post PhD also, it was very interesting, and I would like to share with you, because I could get the job invitation even when I was about to finish. So when I finished, got the degree, within a week, I was back to India, and I got a very respectable position as a head of analytical research in one of the premium institutes in India. And I worked for almost 6 years and did lots of analytical research and application of analytical chemistry in various fields. And then I was invited to come to a global beverage company. This actually is the Indian multinational, as they used to call it. Now it's a Diageo company in India. And I joined as a senior manager, and I worked for almost 25 years there. And then I was eventually retired as senior technology officer from the company. I was also heading the technical center, which was one of the state-of-art technical center, or we used to call Center of Excellence. And I worked there for 25 years, and I was head for almost 14 years as well. Many accomplishments, all analytical and sensory sciences, and also quality management. It's a company-wide quality management. So we had about 60 policing units, and it was all centrally handled. So I was heading the center. So it's a great experience actually and I would say that I could leverage to the maximum what I have learned at Cranes. It was totally transferable in terms of technology and skill while working in these places. And I have also got into newer areas, which are the allied areas, which are very interesting. And I would suggest this is very, very critical, because we work or study in one core area. If we are able to multiply that area in other allied areas, it's very important. And then it becomes very enjoyable as well. Like in my case, I just did analytical chemistry, and I could transfer it to sensory sciences. And now at the moment, currently I'm working in the food pairing, which is very, very important. Food pairing is just It's amazing actually, because it involves a very high-tech analysis, and then analysis of both food and the beverages, and then pairing based on the commonality. Then I could publish many papers, so it's a good training at Queen's, which was very valuable in doing presentation and publication. I could publish many papers, and by working and with experience, I've been invited also to participate at the jury panel in some of the very prestigious spirit competitions. So they invite me to judge. I'm also a member of societies, which is very important, like Royal Society of Chemistry, where I'm a fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry. That leverages, that I'm able to leverage also in my career quite a bit. Currently, I'm a consultant and consulting to a couple of companies like Premium Beverages. They are the premium cider producer in India, and Flavor Active. They are the global sensory training provider, and they are based in London. And I help them in the spirit sensory, and I enjoy every bit of it. Also, now I would like to share what the long-term value I got from Queen's degree. I could achieve my lifelong ambition, that was the advancing my learning analytical chemistry and continuously advancing it. The key positions, I could go to the key position and continuously increasing my salary or position all the time. It's all because of the widely recognized degree from Queen's University. Then it also helped me in the in-depth knowledge, which I have learned at the PhD level and also at work, because the continuous learning is very, very important, which helps me in driving the research and innovation at all times. And also expanding knowledge domain is very, very important, because that helps in going forward in choosing newer areas, in applying problem solving and effective project management. Everywhere this increased knowledge will be helpful. And then excellence's performance is very, very important, because industry always look for deliverables and timely deliverables. So it's very, very important to follow these things. And then professional networking is very important. My other speakers, fellow speakers have also emphasized on that. And I am also very keen on that networking, because that helps a lot. How to articulate, because you see, one very, very important thing when we employ someone, we don't always look only on the qualification, because that is the first part. But the most important thing, that what you have, what is your strength besides the degree, like what specialized knowledge, what hands-on experience, then transferable skill, interpersonal skill, communication skill, organizational skill, publication and presentation skill, team building, and commitment and continuous learning is, as I mentioned before, is very, very important. Critical thinking, problem solving. Sometimes problem solving becomes very critical, because we don't have time and problem has to be solved. But if you are aware of that and you are continuously leveraging your knowledge, it's not a big deal. It's very, very easy. Likewise, your innovation ability and teamwork, collaboration, project, time management. I mean, there are so many traits, but at least some of the traits must be mentioned in your CV or resume when you're presenting to the employer, because they will definitely look for that, and you will get some success out of that positively. So some more pictures. So later visits, because whatever I mentioned just now, I'm quite attached to Queen's University, and every few years I visit. You can see I'm always meeting the Queen's University alumni. Jerry Ian has been always very kind to invite me and have a cup of coffee. Here, Jim Sundal was one of the Professor Jim Sundal was in the department at that time. He has helped me a lot in my research time. So I just took a picture in front of my old lab, which looks new now, as a matter of fact. And there is a picture with my wife, because she also accompanies me every time I go to the Queen's University. So this is what I wanted to convey. And if there's any question, I would be delighted to answer that. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Bennett, thank you very much. I realise we're sort of slightly over time, but just quickly, there were quite a few more questions came in from the audience, I saw, Diane, during that one. I'll just pick up quickly. There was one individual was asking about a CV and how to put it together. Those are things I will provide you with a file with the downloads afterwards. There are things you can pick up there on the careers website to help you with that. Diane, were there any other questions? Could you pick?
Yeah, we have a question specifically for Binod around specifically for international students. So it's a current Queen's student who is an international student, and obviously I've applied to Jordan as well, obviously because you were an international student when you were at Queen's also. What advice would you give to graduates? What advice would you have for international students trying to get into the job market here? And I suppose it's around, we've had a number of questions around, UK sponsorship and finding visa qualifying employment. So, what was your experience of that, maybe Jordan? And then what tips would you have, Binod, for international students trying to find employment?
What I would suggest that if you're coming to join the university, then you have to choose a subject which you like. That's most important. And it is not the subject you are offered to study. The subject you like is most important. And once you finish the degree, then it is always important to mention that in CV and try to attach with that extra knowledge, that what you have, how you can leverage what you have learned. That's most important. And more you can describe, more you can articulate, I think you will be definitely successful. That's what I have done most of the time. And expanding your learning, even when you are at the university, is always necessary. That you try to expand your domain, knowledge domain, all the time, so that you are able to articulate. You can leverage your knowledge far superior than if you don't do that. Is that answer the question?
Yes, that's really helpful, Binod. Jordan, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think kind of having recently gone through a similar situation, it can be very difficult. I think the biggest thing is don't get disheartened. There are a lot of companies, specifically in Northern Ireland, that aren't able to sponsor visas. So I think you need to be really open-minded and potentially be open to looking elsewhere across the UK as well, if you're hoping to stay within the UK and looking within companies that are based in London even, or Manchester, kind of across other areas of the country. I think just having that flexibility and open-mindedness will really help. And networking, I think, is just the most important thing, and kind of adding to your skill set there.
Great, thank you. Another question for you, Jordan, as a recruitment consultant, what one thing makes a CV stand out?
Oh, that's a tough one. Do you know what? Honestly, a lot of the times we pick up on things like within your hobbies section. Like there are plenty of times where you may have a hobby that's different to other people, and it just makes you remember your CV a bit more. I've seen Quidditch on CVs, and then I dig a little bit deeper into a CV. I think the average time a recruiter spends on looking at a CV is like 7 seconds. So if you have something that obviously doesn't overplay your actual skills and all the other things that we are looking for, but something just a little bit different and unique to you, it catches your attention a bit longer to look even further.
Thank you. So a question for Binod and Jordan also, but I think maybe Binod, because it's from a similar sector to the one that you have worked in, and certainly the subject that you started studying at Queen's. So this is from a recent graduate who was due to start a job in the pharmaceutical industry. but due to COVID, this offer has been rescinded. And they're finding that there are very limited jobs for new graduates going into process engineering sectors. So what advice would you or the other panel members have in the current job market? And I guess you touched on it to some extent, Bennett, in your presentation when you talked about the importance of transferable skills and how your skills are very transferable across different industries.
Yes, it's very important to understand the problem, because problem solving is very, very important in the industry. So if you're working in a team, then it becomes very easy, because you can always brainstorm with the problem and try to share the knowledge. And knowledge sharing and then leveraging the big knowledge domain is very easy, actually. So if suppose I have some strength, we have to jot down all our strength. Then we have to also see that how many of those are most important. We have to prioritize and trying to match with the requirement of the industry. And then, because if we try to write that everything I know and try to blind the employer, then they will not be able to understand that. So it's a good idea to understand the employer's need first. If once you know the need, then one can always say that, okay, you need this and I have this skill, I can solve it, I can do that. So that if that is the way, so every CV has to be a different CV. Every application has to be, I'm sure about that, Jordan, you will be able to justify that, what I'm talking. That every CV has to be individualized. It cannot be a common kind of thing, because now we have an email facility. You make one CV and just copy that to everybody. I would never recommend, I have never done also in even the earlier times. Every CV has to be well studied in terms of the employer's requirement. I think if you try 4 or 5 of them, you will be successful.
Jordan, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I 100% agree with Bennett. I think that's tailoring your CV to the role, especially in a sector with limited jobs, is really important. And even if it's a job that you don't necessarily meet every qualification for, if you can address in your CV in some way how you're able to meet that qualification, or you have a transferable skill where you did something somewhere but you're able to transfer that to this role. I think being able to do that and really critically thinking about your skills and how they apply to that role is the best way to get there.
Great, thank you. So one final question for Jordan, and then we can maybe bring in the other panelists, because there are some more sort of general questions that it would be good to have everybody's input into. Jordan, you'd mentioned LinkedIn in your presentation, so we have a question here. Do you have any specific tips on how LinkedIn can help with your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to job searching, I think adding all of your skills on your LinkedIn is really, really important, not only for recruiters to be able to find you. A lot of times recruiters will go into their platform and look for a specific skill. So anything that you're able to do, even project management, time management, all of those little things, add those to your LinkedIn. And then once you go from that point and you start looking at the jobs function of LinkedIn, you can look at, when you look at a job profile, it'll come up with the skill set next to it that you need to, or what the recruiter is looking for in that position. So it really helps you find jobs that are tailored to your skill set. I think beyond that, networking, joining different groups, and kind of constantly expanding and reaching out to new people across various different areas is really helpful to make those connections.
Okay, thank you. Emer, can we bring in the other panelists just for some more general questions? If you wanted
to. Yes, Tessa.
Thanks again, Tessa and
Fergus. Tessa and Fergus for joining us. Yep.
Thank you. I guess following on from the question on LinkedIn, we have a question on tips for looking for a coach. Would you recommend a coach or a mentor? And if you're looking for a coach and a mentor, should you look within the specific field that you're job searching in? Maybe Tessa, you could answer that to start off.
Yeah, so I hold coach and a mentor are two different things. So I think it would be very clear what you're looking for, because a mentor tends to be somebody who has experience in your field or industry and is mentor providing wisdom from within. So I would be clear as to what the ask is or the problem you're trying to solve. A coach can come from any domain, because the general premise of coaching is that the potential lies within the coachee, and the coach's job is to draw that out. So I think I'd be clear, first of all, what you're trying to achieve. And then secondly, that would dictate whether you need a coach or a mentor. And I probably start it from there. There can be advantages to have coaches who are familiar with your industry, because you don't have to explain the context. But most good coaches are, dexterous enough to be able to apply themselves across industry and sector.
Can I just add something to that as well? Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'd say at the moment there are a lot of furloughed people, people kind of between roles, waiting for their companies to wake up and open doors again, especially in hospitality. So hopefully there should be plenty of people, good skills, good experience, who've got time on their hands to help out. So if you're polite in your approach, those people might be more than willing to have it wouldn't be a coffee meeting, it'll be a virtual coffee, just give you some tips and tricks. But yeah, I think now is a good time to approach people. I'll give you an example. I know some people at the moment who are between roles in hospitality, and they're taking time off to write a book, which is kind of, they have enough experience to make that worthwhile. But I wouldn't recommend that. But there are people out there with a lot of good experience who'd love to share.
I also have something to suggest here, which I have learned at this point, the difficult time, that yes, if we have a group of people, a group of students, if they want to have some learning, they can approach and they can form a group of the common topic, and then they can possibly approach the person who can give a master talk or something like that. And it's possible. But it's only question that first one has to form the group, that yes, we have a common interest, and then approach the coach or mentor, or coach, I think would be the right word, as you have just explained. And then I think it's a best utilization of the time at this time. That's what I think.
Thank you. Jordan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with all the other panelists as well. I know, I guess from my experience, I've currently kind of been working with a coach of sorts that's in a completely different industry to me. But previously I've worked with kind of coaches and mentors in my own industry. So I completely agree with Tessa's point as well. I think it really depends on what you're looking for and what you're hoping to gain out of it. But I think anybody with more experience than you is able to pass on knowledge in some form, depending on what you're after. That can be really useful.
Thank you all. It was really helpful. There are quite a few more questions, but we don't have time just to get into them now. So we will, follow up with that just to any of the students that have submitted questions and haven't got answers just this evening. Emer, if you just want to wrap up.
Yes, just a few final comments. I did say that I would share, there are some LinkedIn, Facebook connections there for Darrow and careers, following up if you're interested in keeping going forward and developing your networks with Queen's following on from this. Also, just to say, of course, a very big thank you to all the members of our panel. Really, we've very much appreciated the genuine sharing of advice and tips in your story. And I think one of the things coming out of this key messages I'm hearing to our students and our recent graduates who are joining is that resilience, optimism is important in at this time. And also, we had Grad Fest last week, and if you look at one of the webinars there by my colleague Emma Lennox, you'll see it's talking about a virtual environment, and also she has figures there in terms of actually overall, in terms of the larger employers and the picture that we're seeing in Queen's, most of the recruiters in terms of offers and so on they've made this year, they've held true on those. So it's not a case of a total picture of a very high, very large and significant, but there are still opportunities there, and hopefully things take a positive turn and so on, and as employers themselves adapt, hopefully the picture becomes positive there as well. So that's really it. I want to thank Diane for joining us, but Tessa, Binod, Jordan and Fergus, thank you so much for your time this evening. And as Diane said, we will pick up comments afterwards from anyone who didn't get their question answered this evening. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed talking to all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Take care.